I never thought I would find myself questioning the very fabric of my own mind, but here I am trapped beneath a sky that eats memories as easily as it swallows light. The last blackout left me hollow in ways I hadn't imagined possible. When the darkness lifted, I found myself staring at the pages of my journal, the words trailing off into an empty silence. A sentence I had been writing just moments before was now illegible, as if the thoughts behind them had evaporated into the blackness. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion. The relentless desert heat, the creeping dread of the town's descent into something unrecognizable, it all bore down on me like a weight. But the feeling was different, more profound. It gnawed at the edges of my consciousness, erasing memories I could have sworn were etched into my mind with certainty. I recall sitting at the small wooden table in my modest study, the only light coming from the flickering lamp above. Outside, the desert wind whispered secrets through the cracked window pane, carrying dust that danced like restless spirits. My fingers trembled as I tried to recapture thoughts that slipped through my grasp, flickers of moments from my past, the laughter of my sister, the warmth of my mother's embrace gone, swallowed by the void that lingered not just in the sky, but now inside me. The townsfolk are unraveling too. Mara Quinn, the librarian, met me at the diner today. Her voice was low, almost conspiratorial, as she shared tales of the hollow sky from old journals and whispered folklore. They say the sun itself hides beneath a curse, she told me, eyes darting nervously toward the window where the sky threatened to darken again prematurely. The darkness doesn't just steal light, it steals us, our memories, our very essence. I wanted to dismiss her stories as superstition, but the evidence is undeniable. After each blackout, fewer people return, and those who do seem diminished. Faces blur, names fade. It's as if the blackouts carve away at our souls. Last night's blackout was the worst yet. The sky blackened with unnatural abruptness, swallowing the desert in a suffocating silence. I felt my mind go numb, memories dissolving into a void I couldn't escape. When the light returned, I could no longer recall the face of a dear friend who had vanished weeks ago. It was as though the darkness had claimed not only the missing, but those memories tethered to them. I'm trying to cling to scientific objectivity, to catalogue every detail, every anomaly. But the harder I try, the more the edges of reality blur. The sky's darkness isn't just a physical phenomenon anymore, it's seeping into the psyche, fracturing minds. Sheriff Beckett stopped by this afternoon. His usual gruff demeanor was softened by exhaustion and fear. "Elias," he said quietly, "this town's breaking. People aren't just disappearing, they're becoming shadows of themselves. And you look like you're fighting to hold onto something that's already gone." I nodded, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. He's right. Every blackout pulls me deeper into a chasm I can't escape. The memories that define who I am are slipping away, one by one. I tried to confide in Mara again, hoping her knowledge could anchor me. But even she is losing pieces of herself. We sat in the library, surrounded by dusty tomes and fading sunlight. As she whispered, "If we lose our memories, what remains? What are we beneath this hollow sky?" The question haunts me. I stare up at the sun, now a pale, distant orb, its light dimmed by an unseen weight. The darkness does not simply fall, it consumes. It fractures minds, erases histories, and leaves nothing but empty shells wandering a desert town where the sky turns black without warning. I am afraid, not just of the blackouts, but of what they mean. If the darkness steals memories, then what am I fighting to remember? And if I forget myself entirely, will there be anything left to fight for? Tonight, I will watch the sky closely. I will count every second of darkness and light, marking time like a desperate man clinging to sanity. But beneath the hollow sky, I fear my mind will shatter before the sun can return. And yet, even as the darkness creeps closer, a small part of me refuses to yield. I will search for answers. I will fight the erasure. Because if I do not, then I am lost forever. Just another vanished shadow beneath the fractured sun. The next blackout will come soon. I can feel it in my bones. This time, I will not simply wait. I will confront the darkness head-on, even if it means losing everything that once defined me. But as the sky begins to darken again, swallowing the light with terrifying certainty, I wonder if I am already too far gone. The hollow sky waits, and I have nowhere left to hide. The library was a cavern of shadows and dust, the stale air thick enough to taste as I pushed open the heavy wooden door. Faint light filtered in through grimy windows, illuminating the motes that danced in slow spirals, suspended in the gloom like silent specters. Here, amidst the brittle spines of forgotten tomes and the crackle of brittle pages, I sought answers. The town's history had to hold some clue, some whispered secret buried beneath layers of silence and time. Martha, the town's librarian and historian, was a gatekeeper of these secrets. Her silver hair was pulled tight into a bun, and her sharp eyes, magnified behind thick glasses, seemed to peer through me as I explained my purpose. She was cautious, her voice low, yet beneath her wary exterior lay a reservoir of knowledge that I needed. She led me to a hidden alcove where ancient diaries and hand-drawn maps lay stacked like relics from a forgotten age. As I leafed through the fragile pages, yellowed with age and scenting of dust and decay, a pattern emerged. Accounts of blackouts, the sky turning a suffocating black, stretched back centuries. Each event was marked by a chilling commonality: disappearances, a silence that swallowed the town whole, and warnings scrawled in trembling handwriting about the sky's hunger. One diary, in particular, caught my eye. It spoke of a night when the sun vanished, swallowed by a darkness that was alive, patient, and malevolent. The writer's voice trembled with fear, describing shadows that moved beneath the blackened sky, and a creeping void that erased not only bodies, but memories. The air grew heavier as I absorbed these words, the oppressive atmosphere pressing against my chest like an unseen weight. I felt the cold fingers of dread trace down my spine. This was no mere atmospheric anomaly. Something ancient, something hungry, was stirring beneath the hollow sky. I left the library with a head full of haunted whispers and a heart pounding with unease. My next stop was Eli's ranch. The sun was dipping low, casting long, twisted shadows across the cracked earth. Eli was a stoic man, his weather-beaten face carved by years under the desert sun. He greeted me with a wary nod, his eyes narrowing beneath the brim of a faded cowboy hat. On the creaking porch, the scent of sagebrush mingled with the dry desert wind as Eli spoke, his voice low and cautious. He recounted folk tales passed down through generations, stories of the desert sky turning black, swallowing people whole, and a curse that haunted the land like a spectre. His gaze flickered nervously toward the horizon, as if expecting the darkness to descend at any moment. His warnings were cryptic, but unmistakable. The sky was not just a backdrop, but a living force, restless and malevolent. Leaving Eli's ranch, a shiver ran through me despite the desert heat. The sense of being watched, of something lurking just beyond the veil of reality, was growing impossible to ignore. The sheriff's office was my final stop before nightfall. Sheriff Collins was a man all angles and authority. his crisp uniform and polished badge a stark contrast to the desert's harsh wildness. I confronted him with my findings, hoping for guidance or at least acknowledgement. His face hardened, eyes darkening under furrowed brows. For a moment, his stern mask cracked, revealing a flicker of fear. He warned me, quiet but firm, to stop digging, that some truths were better left buried. There was an invisible line I had crossed, and the weight of unseen forces pressing down on the town was palpable in the cramped, fluorescent-lit room. As twilight bled across the sky, I found myself drawn outside, standing beneath the vast expanse of the desert night. The sky was beginning to darken again, a slow, suffocating blackness swallowing the last traces of light. The air was unnervingly still, the usual desert chorus silenced except for the distant, mournful howl of a coyote. I felt the oppressive weight of the darkened sun pressing down, a chill creeping into my bones. Alone beneath the hollow sky, I realized that this was no random occurrence, but a curse woven into the very fabric of this land. My memories felt fragile, slipping like grains of sand through my fingers. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, and I was left questioning not only the fate of those who had vanished, but my own tenuous grasp on existence. The darkness was alive, watching, waiting, and beneath the hollow sky, the town's secrets were beginning to unravel, with me at the center of the unfolding horror. The questions remained. What was the true nature of this curse? Could I uncover it before I too faded into the void? Or was the sky's hunger already claiming me, erasing the very essence of who I was? As the blackness deepened, swallowing the horizon, I knew one thing for certain. The hollow sky was no longer just a phenomenon to observe. It was a predator, and I was its prey. The night stretched on, endless and consuming, and the countdown to the next blackout had begun. I sat at my desk, the soft hum of the computer and the flicker of the monitor casting long shadows against the peeling paint of the office walls. Outside, the desert sun dipped low, bleeding orange and crimson hues into the horizon. But in here, under the sterile glow of the screen, my world had shrunk to data points and star charts, blackouts and timestamps. Every flicker of the darkened sky was a pulse in my veins, a countdown I couldn't afford to ignore. I had spent the better part of the last week compiling every recorded instance of the blackout, plotting their precise start and end times, cross-referencing them with astronomical data. Each blackout lasted exactly 13 minutes, no more, no less. The regularity was maddeningly precise. It was as if some cosmic mechanism had wound itself tight and was ticking down to an inevitable event. I leaned forward, eyes scanning the irregular clusters of stars above the desert town through the grimy window. The sky was clear now, but the memory of it blackening at a moment's notice hung like a shroud over everything. My fingers trembled slightly as I adjusted the star charts, overlaying them with blackout intervals. Patterns began to emerge, cycles within cycles, a celestial rhythm that defied simple explanation. Suddenly, the office door creaked open. Sheriff Lewis stepped in, his face drawn and tired. "Still chasing ghosts, Doc," he said, half joking, half worried. I gestured to the charts. "I think this isn't just a local weather phenomenon. There's a cosmic element at play. These blackouts, they correlate with the position of a certain cluster of stars. It's like the desert is caught in some orbit of darkness." He grunted, rubbing his chin. "Well, whatever it is, it's taking folks. The town's population keeps shrinking. No one's coming back from the dark." Before I could respond, Mara slipped quietly into the room, clutching her worn, leather-bound book. "You're chasing light in the shadows," she said softly. This town's old. There are stories, ancient ones, about the sky swallowing people whole every few decades. A curse, some say. I frowned, skeptical but intrigued. A curse? We're scientists, Mara. We need facts. She met my gaze steadily. Sometimes the facts hide in the stories. That night, I wandered the near-empty streets, the blackened sky looming above like a dying star's final breath. The streetlights flickered weakly, shadows stretching long and thin across cracked pavement. I could feel the absence of the vanished empty doorways, silent homes, the echo of footsteps that no longer existed. My mind felt fragile, memories slipping through my fingers like grains of sand, faces blurred, names escaped me. The blackout wasn't just stealing people, was stealing parts of me back in my office. I frantically typed, trying to capture every insight before the next blackout arrived. The clock's hands crept toward the hour, 13 minutes looming like a guillotine blade. My breath hitched, fingers trembling over the keys. I couldn't afford to forget. Not now. And then the room dimmed. The sky outside blackened as if a veil had been pulled across the sun. Time slowed, senses dulled. I fought to hold on to reality, to remember why I was here and what I was trying to save. But the darkness was patient, relentless. When the light returned, so did the silence. Another 13 minutes had passed, and fewer souls remained. The curse was real, the cycle was unbroken, and I was losing myself in the hollow sky. The question that haunted me now was simple and brutal. Could I trust my own mind to save us all? Or was I already fading away, another shadow swallowed by the void? The sun had barely risen when the first signs of the 8th blackout crept over the horizon. I was standing outside the weather station, the dry desert air prickling my skin, watching the sky slowly dim as if a curtain had been drawn over the world. The suddenness shocked me, as always. One moment the sky was a harsh, relentless blue. The next, it was a deep, impenetrable black that swallowed the landscape whole. I felt the familiar grip of dread coiled tight around my stomach. I glanced down at my watch. Exactly 13 minutes. The same interval every time. But this blackout felt different, heavier, more oppressive. The desert, usually so alive with the hum of cicadas and the distant whisper of the wind, fell silent. Even the insects seemed to hold their breath. I took a tentative step forward onto the cracked asphalt, the ground beneath my boots rough and uneven. Shadows stretched into black pools, and the air was thick, almost viscous, pressing against my skin like an unseen weight. I tried to call out, my voice cracking in the stillness, but no sound returned. My breaths came shallow and rapid, each one tasting like dust and cold iron. The darkness was complete. It was not merely the absence of light, it was an entity unto itself, a vast, hollow void that consumed everything it touched. I felt a pulse in the air, a vibration that seemed to resonate inside my skull. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind as I struggled to orient myself. The familiar landmarks, the jagged outline of the mesa, the rusted water tower had vanished into nothingness. I stumbled back toward the station, my footsteps muffled and uncertain. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered erratically, casting long, jittering shadows across the peeling walls. The hum of the monitors was distorted, warbling and breaking up like a radio signal lost in a storm. I sank into my chair, fingers trembling as I tried to focus on the data streams. But the numbers were wrong, twisting, unreadable. The graphs warped and shifted like living things, defying every law of physics I knew. I rubbed my eyes, hoping to shake off the hallucination, but when I looked up, My reflection in the cracked window was not my own. A stranger stared back, eyes hollow and distant, features blurred and shifting. A cold shiver raced down my spine. "Who am I?" I whispered into the darkness. The question echoed unanswered. Time fractured. The 13 minutes stretched and compressed, a disorienting loop where seconds bled into one another. Memories flickered at the edges of my mind, faces I once knew, places I had been, but they slipped away whenever I reached for them. Each thought was a ghost, vanishing before it could take form. Then, a knock at the door shattered the silence. Mara. Her presence was a sudden jolt of warmth in the cold void. She pushed the door open, her face pale but resolute, eyes searching mine for answers neither of us possessed. "We don't have much time," she said, voice trembling. "It's happening again. The darkness, it's taking more than just people this time." Together, we exchanged fragments of memories, names, dates, shared moments that now felt like fading echoes. Our words were halting, laden with fear and disbelief. Outside, the first thin slivers of light bled over the horizon, hesitant and uncertain, as if afraid to pierce the black veil. The returning sun was cold and alien, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to twitch unnaturally. I felt a sudden jolt, a sensation like falling endlessly through a void without bottom or end. My grasp on who I was slipped further away. I clung desperately to the remnants of my identity, my name, my purpose, but they dissolved like dust in the wind. As light reclaimed the desert, I stood alone amidst the ruins of my memories, staring up at the hollow sky. Was I still here? Was any of this real? The darkness had taken so much, and now it threatened to erase me entirely. The blackout had ended, but my nightmare was only beginning. And somewhere, beneath that hollow sky, the darkness waited. The horizon was a razor's edge between the known and the unknowable. A fragile boundary where the desert met the sky in a barren, unforgiving embrace. I stood alone on the cracked asphalt of the old highway, the heat of the day ebbing into the cool, unsettling silence that hung heavy in the air. The hollow town behind me lay empty, its once bustling streets reduced to ghostly echoes of life and laughter. Now only memories, or what little of them I could still call my own. Above, the sky began its familiar, dreadful transformation. The sun, a blazing orb moments before, dimmed as if swallowed by a creeping shadow. Then, abruptly, the sky turned pitch black. The darkness was absolute, a velvet void pressing down on the desert like an unseen weight. The world seemed to hold its breath. The usual desert sounds stilled to a haunting hush. A low hum vibrated through the air, almost imperceptible yet insistent, like the pulse of some vast cosmic heart. I felt its vibrations deep in my chest, a tremor that echoed the fading embers of my own memories. The 13 minutes began, each second stretched taut with unbearable tension. I clutched my weather instrument bag, the worn leather ruff beneath my fingers, as I tried to ground myself in the physical, in the here and now. But my mind was slipping, fragments of my past dissolving like mist. Faces I once knew blurred and vanished. The names of people long gone whispered faintly and then fell silent. I was becoming a stranger to myself. When the sky finally lightened, the sun returning as if from a distant eclipse, I was not the same. The town was emptier still. Mara had disappeared during the blackout, leaving behind only a whispered warning etched in my fading memory. "It's not just the sky," she had said, voice trembling. "It's a hunger that takes more than just the light." Desperation drove me to the sheriff's office. its heavy wooden door groaning as I pushed inside. Dust motes danced in the slanting rays of the afternoon sun, settling over stacks of yellowed records and forgotten photographs. Mara had been right. Hidden in the brittle pages were cryptic references to a cosmic cycle predating the town itself, an ancient force that consumed light, life, and memory alike. Sheriff Harlan met me outside the abandoned diner, his eyes shadowed with disbelief and fear. "You're chasing ghosts," he said gruffly, but even his voice wavered. "This town's gone beyond saving." I wanted to argue, to hold on to the hope that logic and science could explain this nightmare. But the black sky above us seemed to pulse with a malevolent life of its own, swallowing words and reason alike. I climbed the ridge overlooking the hollow town as the next blackout approached, the stars faint and trembling through the dark veil. My identity, my memories, my very self felt like sand slipping through desperate fingers. The void stretched before me, infinite and indifferent. In that moment, I faced a choice: to fight the erasure, to cling to the fragments of a disappearing world, or to surrender to oblivion and the endless dark beneath this hollow sky. I stood there, heart pounding, as the 13 minutes began once more.